If you believe, be respectful. Tonight, hello, my friend. Let's begin a long, gentle walk through the Vietnamese world of signs, respect, and quiet caution. The place where oil lamp light flickers and the wind from open rice fields sounds like someone breathing just beyond the fence. In Vietnam, there's a saying people repeat half joking, half serious. Ko to ko thiêng, ko kiêng, ko lành. It doesn't translate perfectly, so let me say it in a way an American listener can feel. It means, when you show respect, life feels protected. And when you avoid certain things, especially at sacred moments, life feels safer. Not because we can prove the invisible, but because communities, families, and memory are held together by these shared rules. In the West, you might think of it like this. Some families have house rules that aren't written anywhere. You follow them not out of fear, but out of love, tradition, and the feeling that certain boundaries keep a home peaceful. In Vietnam, those boundaries often connect to karma and ancestry, not as a scary threat, but as a soft moral compass. You plant what you harvest. The idea that what you do, what you say, and how you treat people eventually returns to you, maybe slowly, maybe quietly, but rarely randomly. Before we go deeper, settle in, dim the lights. Let a fan hum softly if you like. And imagine you're sitting near a small altar in an old wooden house. In many Vietnamese homes, an ancestor altar is not worshiping gods in the way some Western ears might assume. It's closer to a living relationship with family memory. A way of saying, we remember who came before us. We're grateful. We're trying to live with decency so we don't embarrass the people whose names we carry. When elders remind children to speak gently near the altar, they're not only warning about spirits, they're teaching reverence, self-control, and gratitude. And that's where our journey begins tonight, in that soft space between belief and behavior, between folklore and moral lesson. Because sometimes the most mystical stories are really just the oldest way humans learn to stay kind, stay careful, and stay together. What you do returns. Now, keep walking with me, quietly, because this part is less about ghosts and more about something heavier, the feeling that life has a memory. In Vietnamese storytelling, karma, Nhân Quả, is often described like a shadow. You can run, you can hide, you can pretend you're fine, but the shadow follows. It might shrink at noon, it might stretch at dusk, yet it never truly disappears. For a Western listener, this can sound like fate or divine punishment. But in Vietnamese culture, it's usually framed more like cause and effect mixed with morality. If you harm people, relationships break, trust collapses, your name becomes bitter in the mouths of neighbors. If you do good, people remember, doors open, help returns at the moment you need it most. And when people can't explain why something happened, karma becomes a language to process it, a way to give meaning to suffering, and to remind the living. Choose better, even when nobody is watching. You'll hear old tales about greedy officials, corrupt landowners, people who abused power and later found themselves abandoned. The stories don't need to be historically perfect to do their job, because their purpose is emotional truth. They teach that cruelty isolates you, that arrogance makes you fragile, that the village may smile politely, but it never forgets. In Vietnam, community memory is powerful. In small towns, reputation is almost like currency. So when elders say, "Be careful, karma is real," sometimes they mean, your actions echo, your family carries your name, and what you do can either protect the next generation or burden them. And that leads to another Vietnamese proverb, Uong Nuoch No Nguyen. Literally, when you drink water, remember the source. In American terms, it's like, remember who helped you. Remember where you came from. Don't become the kind of person who climbs up and then kicks the ladder away. These sayings are repeated so often they become lullabies, not strict sermons. And in that repetition, they quietly shape behavior. Now imagine an elderly relative speaking to a child near the altar. The voice isn't angry, it's tired, loving, firm. Don't shout, don't curse, don't act wild here. On the surface, it sounds like superstition, but underneath it's social education, emotional discipline, respect for the home, respect for the dead, respect for the living. And if you've ever been in a quiet American church or at a funeral, you already know the feeling. You lower your voice, not because you're afraid of punishment, but because the moment asks for reverence. In Vietnam, that reverence doesn't live only in temples. It lives inside houses, inside kitchens, inside the space where family photos watch silently from the wall. And now, as the night grows deeper, we drift toward the most sacred season in Vietnamese life, the New Year, Tet, where one sentence, one small accident, even one visitor at the wrong time, can feel like it sets the tone for everything that comes after. The first day sets the year, Tet and the weight of beginnings. Now stay with me, because here we arrive at a moment that feels almost unreal to many Western listeners. The belief that a single morning can tilt an entire year. Tet, the Vietnamese Lunar New Year, is not just a holiday. It is a threshold, a thin door between what has ended and what has not yet begun. In these days, people move carefully, not out of fear, but out of deep respect for beginnings. There is an old idea here. The first sound you hear, the first words you speak, the first person who enters your home. All of it becomes a quiet blueprint for the months ahead. To someone raised in a Western culture, this can sound like superstition, but emotionally, it's closer to setting an intention, magnified by collective belief. When millions of people slow down at the same time, the moment feels heavier, more real. Elders remind children to speak gently. No shouting, no swearing, no talk of illness or death, because words are seen as seeds. Say something dark on the first morning, and darkness may grow. That's why laughter is encouraged, why greetings are warm, why even arguments are postponed. In small villages, people still remember stories of a single careless sentence spoken on New Year's morning, followed by a year of misfortune. Whether true or not, the lesson lingers. Words matter. Timing matters. Kindness matters most when it is hardest. There is also the quiet ritual of not sweeping the house on the first day. Dust and mess are tolerated, because sweeping is believed to sweep away luck. From the outside, this may seem illogical, but symbolically, it's beautiful. It says, Don't rush to erase what has just arrived. Don't clean away possibility before it has time to settle. Some families even prepare old bowls and dishes in advance, afraid that breaking something new would symbolize fracture or loss. If something does break, a quick phrase is spoken, wishing wholeness, abundance, repair. Language steps in to soften reality. Money becomes sensitive too. No borrowing, no demanding repayment, because debt on the first day suggests a year of lack. Instead, red envelopes are given. Li Xi, not as payment, but as a blessing made tangible. For a child, it's excitement. For an elder, it's a quiet transfer of hope. Prosperity folded into paper, pressed into a small palm. And then there is the most powerful belief of all, the first person to enter the home after midnight. Shong Jat. This person is thought to carry the energy of the year. Families choose carefully, someone gentle, healthy, successful, good-hearted. In rural areas, doors remain closed at dawn, not from fear, but from waiting. Waiting for the right knock, the right smile, the right voice to cross the threshold first. It's not about controlling fate. It's about inviting the best version of it inside. And as you sit with this, you may realize something familiar. We all do this, in quieter ways, choosing who we spend our first moments with, choosing how we speak when something new begins. Vietnam simply names it, ritualizes it, wraps it in story so it can be remembered. From this sacred beginning, we drift deeper into kitchens filled with steam, into myths cooked into food, where even what you eat carries meaning, and nothing is ever just a meal. When food becomes prayer, the sacred meaning of Tet offerings, and now, gently, we move from the doorway into the heart of the home, the kitchen, where steam rises like incense and food becomes a form of prayer. In Vietnamese belief, what you eat at the beginning of the year is not about taste alone. It is about symbolism, nourishment for the body and alignment for fate. To Western ears, this may sound poetic, but here food has always spoken a second language, one of intention, memory, and gratitude. At the center of Tet is Ban Chung, a square rice cake wrapped in green leaves, dense, heavy, patient. It takes many hours to cook, sometimes overnight. Families sitting awake beside the fire, talking softly as the pot bubbles. The shape is not random. The square represents the earth, stability, grounding, while its round sibling Ban Giai represents the sky. Together they echo an ancient story told to children for centuries. The legend of Prince Lang Liu, who offered simple food made with care instead of rare treasures, and was rewarded not for wealth, but for understanding. To a Western listener, think of it as a civilization saying, humility feeds longer than ambition. The offering table grows slowly, 5 fruits arranged carefully, not chosen for flavor, but for sound and meaning. In the South, their names form a sentence when spoken together, a wish to have enough, to be secure, to live without fear of lack. In the North, green bananas curve upward like open hands, supporting the other fruits, symbolizing protection, shelter, continuity. Each region speaks the same hope, just in a different dialect of belief. Food is placed on the ancestor altar before anyone eats, not because the dead are hungry, but because remembrance comes before consumption. To eat first would be to forget where life came from. Even the poorest families prepare something: a bowl of rice, a piece of fruit, because sincerity matters more than abundance. This idea can feel unfamiliar in cultures where productivity comes first. But here, gratitude sets the tone before progress begins. Certain foods are avoided, not because they are cursed, but because language gives them shadows. Duck may be skipped, as its name echoes separation. Bitter melon avoided, its bitterness believed to invite hardship. Instead, there is pork, rich and whole, sticky rice, binding, pickled vegetables, sour but balanced, reminding everyone that hardship and sweetness always arrive together. As you listen, you may realize this isn't about superstition at all. It's about mindfulness before mindfulness had a name. It's about beginning slowly, choosing symbols carefully, telling the subconscious, this year, we move with care. And when the meal ends, when the dishes sit unwashed for just a little while longer, it's not neglect. It's reverence. From these meals, these offerings, these quiet prayers made of rice and fire, we now move deeper into the places where memory lives the longest: altars, incense, and the invisible presence of those who came before us. The Ancestor altar, where memory never leaves the room. And now, we step softly into the quiet center of the house, where time slows, voices lower, and even children seem to breathe more gently. This is the Ancestor altar, not a shrine to death, but a living conversation with the past. For Western listeners, it may help to imagine a family photo wall that can answer back, a place where memory is not passive but present, active, listening. In many Vietnamese homes, the altar sits at the highest point of the house, never on the ground, never beneath footsteps, because respect must look upward. Incense burns slowly, not to summon spirits dramatically, but to signal attention, like knocking before entering a room. The smoke rises thin and wavering, believed to be a bridge between worlds, a visible reminder that what cannot be seen is still acknowledged. The names on the altar are not distant ancestors lost to time. They are grandparents, great-grandparents, people whose habits still echo in daily life, whose temperaments still appear in grandchildren. When a family lights incense, they speak aloud not because the dead need sound, but because the living need ritual. It organizes emotion, gives shape to grief, gratitude, and responsibility. To kneel or bow before the altar is not submission. It is alignment, a way of saying, I remember where I come from, and I will try not to embarrass you. This idea of inherited dignity may feel unfamiliar in cultures centered on individual achievement. But here, your life is seen as a continuation, not a standalone chapter. Certain rules surround the altar. Voices should not rise. Arguments must wait. Laughter is softened, because disorder near the altar is believed to ripple outward, not as punishment, but as imbalance. Western psychology might call this emotional conditioning, but tradition calls it respect made visible. Even the placement of objects matters: water for clarity, fruit for abundance, incense for connection. Photos are often black and white, not to emphasize death, but to strip distraction, leaving only presence. And when families move homes, the altar is moved last, after walls are built and beds are placed, because memory must arrive after shelter, but before comfort. Some say ancestors watch, others say they guide. Many simply say they remind. But almost everyone agrees on one thing. When life becomes confusing, when choices feel heavy, standing before the altar brings a strange calm. Not answers, but steadiness, as if someone older, wiser, has placed a hand lightly on your shoulder. And from this quiet place of remembrance, where smoke fades but memory stays, we move outward again, into the darker edges of belief, where respect becomes caution, and caution becomes taboo, where not everything is invited, and some things are better left unnamed. Taboos after dark, when respect turns into warning, and now, as the house grows quieter, as the incense burns lower, belief steps into its shadowed form. Taboo. These are not rules written down. They are rules felt, passed through whispers, warnings, and the subtle tightening of the chest when someone says, "Don't do that at night." To Western ears, taboos can sound irrational, but here they are not about fear for fear's sake. They are about boundaries, protecting fragile spaces where the seen and unseen feel too close. At night, the world is believed to thin. Sounds travel differently. Intentions feel heavier. That is why certain actions are avoided after sunset. Whistling in the dark is discouraged, not because sound summons monsters, but because it breaks stillness, invites attention. The old explanation says spirits may follow the sound. The practical one says night should remain calm, unprovoked. Even mirrors are treated carefully. Staring too long at your reflection late at night is said to blur identity, as if the mind might wander where it shouldn't. Names are softened after dark. Calling someone loudly at night is avoided, especially children, because to call is to invite, and not everything answers with good intent. In Western terms, think of it as linguistic caution. Words carry weight, especially when the world is quiet enough to hear them echo. Bedrooms have their own rules. Feet should not point toward the ancestor altar while sleeping, not because punishment follows, but because posture reflects intention. Turning your souls toward reverence is seen as careless, disrespectful, and beds should never face mirrors directly, not to avoid ghosts, but to avoid restlessness. Reflection meeting reflection, mind unable to settle. Objects dropped at night are handled gently. Sweeping the floor after dark is discouraged. Believed to scatter fortune, but also to disturb what is already settled. Even cutting nails or hair at night is avoided, not because fate is cruel, but because trimming is symbolic of separation, and night is for holding things together. None of these taboos are enforced with fear alone. They are enforced with tone, with a grandmother's quiet "don't," with a candle paused mid-air, with a glance that says, "Some things are better respected than tested." Western psychology might call this intergenerational behavioral framing. Tradition calls it wisdom learned the long way. And yet, these taboos soften with intention. Kindness protects, calm shields. A clean heart walks safely through the dark. The night is not evil. It is simply honest. It reveals what the day can hide. And from this edge, where caution sharpens awareness, we drift even further into signs, omens, and the subtle language of nature itself, where the world speaks, but only if you know how to listen. Signs from the world itself, when nature becomes a messenger, and now we step outside, beyond walls and altars, into the open air, where belief listens not to voices, but to movement, to sound, to coincidence that feels a little too precise to ignore. In Vietnamese folk belief, nature is never silent. It is observant, responsive, always sending small signals. To Western minds, these may sound like superstition, but here they are, closer to pattern recognition, shaped by generations of living close to land and weather. A bird striking a window, a dog howling at midnight, a sudden chill without wind. These moments pause conversation, not because terror arrives, but because attention sharpens. The old saying goes, "Heaven does not speak loudly, it nudges." A falling bowl may not mean disaster, but it asks you to slow down. A sudden rain during an important decision is not fate deciding for you, but a reminder to reconsider. Animals carry special weight. Dogs are believed to sense what humans cannot. When they stare into empty space or refuse to enter a room, people take note, not panic, just note. Birds arriving unexpectedly near a home can be read as news approaching, not good or bad by default, just change. In Western terms, think of this as a symbolic language, not literal prophecy. Meaning is drawn from context, timing, and intuition. Dreams are treated the same way. Not all dreams matter, only the ones that linger, that repeat, that arrive with emotional clarity. A dream of clear water suggests peace. Muddy water suggests inner conflict. Losing teeth in a dream is often interpreted as anxiety about family or loss. Not because dreams predict events, but because they reveal concern the waking mind avoids. Long before psychology named it, folk belief listened to the subconscious through symbols. Even the body speaks. A sudden shiver, an unexplained heaviness, a warmth without cause. Elders say the body knows before the mind does. Modern science might agree more than it admits. Stress, intuition, memory stored beneath language. Here, it is simply accepted that the body listens to the world quietly. But not all signs demand belief. Many demand humility. They are invitations to pause, not commands to obey. A wise person does not panic at signs. They observe, reflect, adjust. That balance is the core of the belief system, not fear, but awareness. And as we learn to read these subtle messages, to walk gently among signs without becoming lost in them, we arrive at the final understanding, the one that ties belief, taboo, respect, and memory into a single quiet truth, one that follows us even after the story's end. Gieo, the quiet law that never sleeps. And now, gently, everything begins to settle. The signs grow quieter, the taboos loosen their grip, the incense fades into memory, and what remains is something simpler, deeper, older than ritual itself, cause and effect. What Vietnamese belief calls Nhân Quả. To Western listeners, this may sound like karma, but here it is: less cosmic punishment and more moral gravity. A quiet pull that shapes lives whether one believes in it or not. The elders say, Gieo Nhan now, got qua ai, plant one seed, harvest its echo, not immediately, not predictably, but inevitably. Good deeds are not rewarded with fireworks. They return as steadiness, trust, doors opening when you are tired of knocking. Harm does not always strike back loudly. It erodes, relationships thinning, luck drifting away, peace becoming harder to find. This is why belief in spirits never replaced belief in responsibility. Ghosts may frighten, omens may warn, but character decides direction. Even the most sacred rituals mean little without intention. You can light incense with a careless heart, and it becomes smoke. Or you can light it with humility, and it becomes memory made visible. In Vietnamese folk thought, the universe is not eager to punish. It is patient. It watches patterns, how people treat parents, strangers, animals, land. The smallest acts matter: returning a lost item, lowering your voice before an altar, choosing restraint when anger feels justified. These are seeds too, quietly planted. Over generations, this belief shaped communities. Why neighbors guard each other's rice during storms. Why elders are greeted first. Why gratitude comes before ambition. Not because of fear, but because people learned, again and again, that kindness builds shelter longer than power ever could. And now, as you lie here listening, perhaps half asleep, you don't need to believe every story, every omen, every rule. That was never the requirement. All that was asked was awareness. Move through the world gently, speak with care. Remember those who came before you, and trust that what you send outward will eventually find its way home. The night has done its work. The stories have folded themselves away, like incense ash settling into a quiet line. And as your breath slows, as thought softens, you may feel it. Not fear, not mystery, but reassurance. That even in a world full of uncertainty, some laws remain kind. Sleep now. The seeds have been planted.